The road stretched endlessly through the darkness. A slick ribbon of asphalt cutting through a storm that refused to end. Rain fell in violent sheets, hammering the windshield like tiny fists, blurring the world outside into streaks of gray and black. Ethan Brooks leaned forward over the steering wheel, eyes heavy, body aching, the hum of his 18-wheeler vibrating through his bones. The dashboard clock blinked 2:47 a.m. in dull red digits, the only thing in his life that seemed certain anymore. He'd been driving for hours. No music, no radio, just the steady rhythm of rain and the soft hiss of tires slicing through puddles. Every mile marker looked the same, swallowed by fog and distance, until the world itself began to feel like a loop, a stretch of highway that never ended. The fuel gauge dipped lower. He glanced at it, frowned, and tapped the glass like that would change something. The needle trembled, then sank into the red. "Come on," he muttered, his voice drowned out by thunder. He hadn't seen another vehicle in nearly an hour. No lights, no signs, nothing but the lonely glow of his own headlights fading into mist. Then, just as his stomach twisted with the first taste of fear, he saw it. Through the blur of rain, a flicker, a faint, stuttering glow on the horizon, like a heartbeat. He blinked, leaned forward, squinting through the storm. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't a reflection. It was a sign. Last gas for 100 miles. The words pulsed in red neon, barely holding together through decades of decay. A wave of relief washed over him. He hadn't realized how tense he was until his grip loosened on the wheel. "Finally," he whispered as he pulled off the highway, tires crunching over wet gravel. The rain thinned as he rolled into the lot. The sign buzzed faintly above, and for the first time in hours, he heard something other than the storm silence. The gas station looked like it hadn't been touched in years. A single pump stood crooked near the front, its paint peeling, its numbers faded. The convenience store's glass windows were streaked with grime, reflecting the weak neon glow in trembling patterns. Ethan stepped out, slamming the door behind him, and noticed the strangest thing. The moment his boots hit the ground, the rain stopped. Completely. No drops, no thunder, no sound. Even the air felt still. He looked around. The fog pressed close, too thick to see the road he'd come from. Somewhere, deep in the distance, something metallic creaked. Maybe a sign swaying in the wind, maybe something else. Then he saw movement. Inside the store, through the dirty window, someone was standing behind the counter. Just standing, perfectly still. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. He told himself it was fine. Maybe the guy had been waiting inside, avoiding the rain. But something about the figure felt wrong. The posture was too stiff. The face, pale, half-lit by the flickering fluorescent light, seemed frozen in place. Ethan shook it off. "You're tired," he whispered to himself. "You're seeing things." He pushed open the door. The small bell above it didn't ring. It just swung silently. The smell hit him first. Old dust, gasoline, and something faintly metallic beneath it all. Behind the counter stood a man. His eyes were wide open, staring directly at Ethan, lips stretched into a crooked smile that never quite reached his eyes. Ethan hesitated. "Hey, you open?" The man didn't blink, didn't move, just smiled. Ethan stepped closer, unease crawling up his spine. "Need some gas. Pumps still work." The man's head tilted slightly to the side, a slow, unnatural motion that made a faint cracking sound in his neck. Then, in a voice that sounded like static through an old radio, he whispered, "Need gas." Ethan froze. The man's mouth barely moved, but the words filled the air, echoing slightly, as if bouncing off walls that weren't there. "Why yeah," Ethan stammered. "Truck's almost empty." The man's grin widened just enough to show his teeth. Yellowed, uneven. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Then pay, inside." Ethan reached for his wallet, trying to act normal, but his hands shook. He placed a $20 bill on the counter. The man's eyes never moved to it. A gust of wind suddenly slipped through the cracked window, scattering old receipts across the floor. One slid to Ethan's boot. He bent down to pick it up, anything to look away from that face. The paper was yellowed, damp, almost crumbling at the edges. The ink was faded, but he could still make out the date. June 12, 1983. The clerk's name was printed neatly at the bottom. H. McGraw. And scrawled beneath it, in smeared red pen, was a single line. Don't let him fill the tank. Ethan stared at the old receipt in disbelief. The ink looked dry, yet the words seemed fresh, as if someone had written them minutes ago. The paper felt damp, too damp, and when he lifted it closer to his face, he could swear he smelled iron. He looked back up. The clerk was still smiling, still staring. Ethan forced a chuckle. You, been working here long? No answer, just that frozen grin. He folded the receipt into his pocket, trying to act casual. The silence in the station was unnatural, too heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Somewhere near the back of the store, a fluorescent light flickered, buzzing softly, and for a second Ethan thought he saw someone move between the shelves. He turned his head sharply. Nothing, just shadows, rows of dusty snacks and expired drinks coated in cobwebs. Pump still good? He asked, his voice quieter now. The man nodded once, but his eyes didn't move with his head. They stayed fixed on Ethan, unblinking. A chill ran through Ethan's arms. He backed away toward the door, his boots echoing too loud on the linoleum. He pushed the door open and stepped out into the misty air. The moment he crossed the threshold, sound returned. Faintly. The hum of the sign, the drip of water from the roof, the hiss of his truck engine cooling. He exhaled shakily, telling himself he was imagining things. He walked toward the pump, the old metal groaning as he lifted the handle. His reflection looked strange in the glass, stretched, warped by raindrops. He jammed the nozzle into his tank and pressed the lever. The counter spun, numbers flickering unevenly. And then, a faint voice behind him. You paid inside? Ethan turned quickly. The clerk was standing just a few feet behind him. No sound, no footsteps, no movement, just there. Ethan's throat went dry. Yeah, I did. How did you? The man just tilted his head again. That same awful motion. Don't fill the tank. Ethan blinked. What? Don't fill the tank. The words hissed like air escaping a tire. Then silence. Ethan turned back to his truck, trying to ignore the crawling feeling under his skin. The pump kept running. He stared at the meter and froze. It wasn't counting up. It was counting down.